exactly. I was like, oh God,
Radical
I don't want to be that person. But when you're in the bubble with all your mates and it's great. But outside of that bubble, you're like, oh God, like I hope I don't sound like that.
Hello, Budri Gamalwara from the Gadigal Lands here in Sydney. It's time for Startup 360. I'm Simon Thomsen, editor of Startup Daily.
And I'm Majella Campbell, CEO of Fishminers.
Oh, we nailed it this week. How's your week been? It's been hot along the way.
Yeah, it's been warm. I'm welcoming the warm weather. It's
Summer's
very
here.
nice.
Well, you look fabulous today. You are very summery and bright and shiny. I absolutely love it.
One time I wear colour.
Speaking of colour, we've got a fabulous guest on the show today. Tell us who it is.
We've got Alex Miller from Rechargely and Hudled.
He's an amazing founder because he's been an entrepreneur for a long time.
He's got a lot of different things under his belt.
Lots of pivots too. And interestingly, Rechargely was a pivot that came out of Hudled, but he's still got both startups running.
It's good. I feel like it's a mark of a good founder. You know, if you're not pivoting or you're not changing, you're probably doing something wrong. Or you got very lucky.
Well, which I'm going to lead me straight into the news, pivoting. Interesting pivot for Kiki. Of course, you may remember the New Zealand startup, which kicked off as short-term rental accommodation, finding people, you know, who can live together. Did in New Zealand, got, let's just say, a shit ton of money from Blackbird. I'm not going to remind everyone how many millions of dollars because I know it triggers a few people. But they then came over to Sydney and did it for a while, then shut that down, went to New York, then shut that down, then reopened it, then shut down again. Then they're now in London. And I know that this week the founder, Toby, was putting a photo of a cake with all the team around it with 200 people as customers of the London one. He likes celebration. It's the eternal optimism of the spotless mind, I think. A little bit of Toby. But the interesting thing is news, and I have to give absolute credit to Tegan Jones from Smart Company, who's been pursuing this for a long time. And I think in some ways, because she asked the questions way back when it opened up, probably triggered the New York mayor's office to have a look, because the news that came out this week is that the mayor's office of special enforcement today announced that Kiki Club, a service which allegedly operated as an illegal short-term rental matchmaker in New York City, paid more than US $152,000. That's nearly $250,000 Australian to settle charges that it violated New York City's short-term rental laws designed to protect housing stock and ensure neighbourhood safety. OSC's investigation determined Kiki Club ran a social media invite-only website in NYC since 2023 that facilitated short-term rentals, effectively creating a platform for illegal stays without legislation or registration or regulatory oversight. What happens there is there's something called Local Law 18, and it's been around for even before Airbnb days. It goes back decades. But the simple fact is that you have to register. You can. If you're going to be able to rent out your apartment, 30 days is the maximum, and they're only permitted if you're registered with the OSE. And there's a whole bunch of details and compliance. But it dates back to the 1960s, this law. So
it's not a new one.
Kiki went into this market, I assume knowing that this law was going to be an issue, didn't do the registration. They were unimpressed, the New York City Mayor's office, and they've spent, now 224,000 Australian dollars on a fine for what happened there. Of course, they've left that jurisdiction. They're now doing it in London. I haven't checked the laws there. Tegan, you may want to have a look at the laws over there because we'll see what happens next. Yeah. But I am sort of thinking, what are we now? 4 cities down. There's around about 48,000 major cities in the world. So there are still opportunities for Kiki to explore in another 47,996 cities. So we'll see what happens next with them.
Yeah. Are they running in? They're not running in other cities, just London, right?
They're just in London now. So but the story that Toby always told was that he was absolutely successful in Sydney. which is why they shut it down.
Shut it down.
Incredibly successful in New Zealand as well, which is why they shut it down. And there was the moment, of course, when they were going to do the 3 male co-founders were going to put a girls' club in New York City, which that was nearly 2 years ago now, which caused enormous backlash and a fair bit of anger amongst women. I wonder why. So that plan was abandoned, and they went back to creating the original idea once again, but still forgot to register it with the OSC, it would seem.
Yeah.
So interesting story to read. I've done it on Startup Daily, but I do recommend you read Tegan on Smart Company because she has been all over this one and has done a very comprehensive coverage on it. The other big one for last week, just as we were going to air, was Firmus Technologies.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, if you're looking for a rocket ship going from $1.9 billion valuation back in September, all the way back in September, to this last week, $6 billion, having raised another $300 million. This is the company that is based in Singapore, but a couple of Australian founders. They're building a data centre for AI down in Tasmania in a collaboration with the Tasmanian government. They also have plans to spend around about $73 billion rolling out data centres in various cities on Australia's east coast, as well as a couple of other towns. They've got partnerships with NVIDIA, and it's supposedly going off. But whoa, that is extraordinary because Oliver Curtis, who initially invested $250,000 in that company originally when it kicked off, and originally they were doing Bitcoin mining. Yeah. By my calculation, he's probably close to a billionaire on paper at this point in time, and people just keep slinging money at it. I did do a story, I have to say, on Startup Daily this week about how to recognise the AI bubble when the AI bubble's about to burst. So that's not in there as one of the signs, but gosh, it's pretty crazy, isn't it?
Some
a $6 billion valuation.
Crazy money gap going there.
Which stands, I have to say, in sad contrast to what's happening at CSIRO. And quite distressing news because news came out this week that the National Science Agency will cut 350 more research jobs after already getting rid of more than 800 positions in the past 18 months as funding is stagnant and costs keep increasing. CSIRO said on Tuesday that it needed to cut a further 300 to 350 full-time roles in its research teams and narrow its research after decades of stretching resources. The organisation faced, quote, long-term financial sustainability challenges as federal funding was not keeping pace with the rising costs of running a modern science agency. I'm sorry, but that is negligence on the part of the government. Because
it should be. Science and research is too important to not be funding.
Because all of these politicians love to get up and talk about all the amazing things that came out of CSIRO as a side of how brilliant Australian innovation is. And then when it comes to stumping up the cash, no, you have to be a WA mining billionaire. And then it's like, how much can we sling at you? Or, an electorate where they're sort of facing marginal seats and some weird... the bloody $1 billion that's going into that Tasmanian stadium for the AFL is insane, and the Tasmanians have been voting on that one this week. But here we are with CSIRO losing, the next potential Wi-Fi, the next potential black box, all those things that politicians love talking about because they won't fund it properly. CSIRO said it needed to invest between $80 million and $130 million per year over the next decade just to maintain its infrastructure and technology. How does our National Science Agency end up crying poor, and what does it say about us and our priorities?
What I want to say is if you want to eat from the plant, you've got to water it, and that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, and you may have to fertilise it with a little bit of cash every now and then.
Exactly.
Anyway, anything you want to rant about this week?
Nothing. I don't want to go after that. I want to give that the attention that it needs.
Yeah. So Chief Executive Dr. Doug Hilton said the organisation needed to adapt and focus more on the research it did best, an approach CSIRO described as fewer things better. as it cut jobs. We must set up CSIRO for the decades ahead with a sharpened research focus that capitalises on our unique strengths, allows us to concentrate on the profound challenges we face as a nation and deliver solutions at scale, Hilton said. I mean, I even just look at the number of startups that have been spun out of CSIRO ideas over the last decade, and I just think that's going to dry up along the way as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, those are the types of things that go first when you cut those things. But sounds like the CSIRO team are making the most of what they can and focusing on.
Minister Tim Ayres was all over this. He's the Minister for Innovation, Industry and Science, and said, while a few more job cuts will be difficult for CSIRO staff, reforming the agency is essential. And then he says, quote, this review, the first of its kind in over 15 years, will mean CSIRO exits or scales back research in areas where that work is being undertaken by other parts of the R&D system and builds the foundation for strengthening and focusing effort in areas of national industrial science priority, he said in a statement. Reprioritisation is difficult but essential to maintain Australia's scientific and innovation leadership role for the benefit of Australians. It's kind of like that. The thing about politicians is they only ever want an answer to a question where they already know the answer. And I think that's part of the mindset that they deal with all the time. I watched a debate just the other day where a lot of the thinking was around confirming existing biases. And I just think the blue sky stuff is a precious commodity. If only it was a rare earth mineral, they'd be slinging a lot of money at it right now. Yeah. And it is. It's a very rare earth mineral innovation.
Very important.
And it needs the investment and the imagination to be able to discover it.
Exactly. It takes time, those sorts of things.
All right. Well, shall we wrap me teeing off at politicians, one of my favourite sports ever. All right. We'll be right back with our guest, Alex Miller. Don't go away.
Welcome back to Startup 360. We are joined with Alex Miller, CEO and co-founder of Rechargely and Hudled.
Hey,
welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Kind of feel like you should have the cap Huddled on along with the Rechargely t-shirt, just so it's got all the brands in there.
That's good.
And
Maximum
nobody
exposure.
will be confused. Yeah, you can only wear one shirt, isn't it? So we're in the Rechargely shirt today.
All right.
Well, to kick off, tell us a little bit of a story about what Rechargely and both Hudled are and how you got to be sitting in the chair right here, right now.
So, all right. So we started with Hudled about 4.5 years ago. So we raised some money through Antler with the idea of companies are wasting so much money on software. There's all this prolific waste. And as your company gets bigger, that waste grows in a disproportionate way. So I started in accounting and I saw this issue throughout my career. And when I came and sold my last company at the beginning of 2020, it was the perfect opportunity to combine my experience of tech and also in accounting. And that was that. And during 2020, there was not a lot going on elsewhere. So why not start a company? And so we built and worked through Hudled for a few years. And what we discovered is that accounting firms were managing hundreds of thousands of dollars on behalf of their clients. And in the Hudled dashboard, which was supposed to help them track all of this, they were hiding it. And we just couldn't work out why, because it was coming off their credit card. It was their spend, but they didn't consider it as their own. And then when we asked, why did you do this? Why do you do that? How do you manage it? How do you ensure it comes back? They didn't really have any good answers. And at the time, we were facing some headwinds with Hudled.
I love this because it sounds like accountants are not very good at accountancy.
Well, this was the irony because it just made them look really bad. If your accountant, the steward of your money, can't even collect their Xero subscription back from their own client, like God help them working out how to do complex tax or anything else.
Oh my gosh. Right? Yep. Okay.
So as we were going through all of that, we're like, hang on a minute. This just makes no sense at all. The existing solutions were spreadsheets and people spending hours keying in information, which surprisingly people still do that. If you give admin 8 hours and you don't give them a process, then they're just going to key everything in. So work that out. And we're like, oh God, this is actually, it feels and looks a lot like Hudled. And we wanted to work with accounting firms. So it ticked a big box for us. So then like the Hudled vision sort of evolved into helping accounting firms manage all the software and things that they buy and manage on behalf of their clients. And so this is the non-linear journey of how we got here today.
The pivot.
It's kind of wild because you found the nugget inside the bigger pile that you'd already built, because Hudled had enormous success very early on. I remember doing a story on Startup Daily where I think within 12 months you had more than 100 million US in subscriptions that you were already managing. So Hudl's still ticking along and you're looking after people on that front.
Mm-hmm.
But my understanding is that the big baby, the revenue baby, is now Rechargely. Did you expect that, or were you surprised, or was it the revelation of the opportunity there to solve a big problem for the accounting software?
It's always tricky, isn't it? Because things were working with Hudled, and to take a step back in order to go forward faster is always a really hard decision. And when our team sat down and we were evaluating what was in front of us with what we knew versus what we discovered about what could be, it was really challenging at the time. And it all came down to what was the business that we wanted to try and do. And we really wanted to work with accounting firms and use accounting firms as our distribution.
You can take the accountant out of the accounting firm.
Yes, exactly. And what we discovered is that software management is only a portion to a small group of accounting firms' clients. So we would spend all this time educating them, onboarding them, and then of 1,000 clients, we would get maybe 50. And you're like, well, this isn't really worth it, is it? But then when we worked out there was a way for us to get every single client, then that was really going to be the nugget that was going to unlock much bigger opportunity for us in the future. And so with that bet, we made the decision before going ahead and saying we're going to focus on this. There were sort of 3 things that had to be true. First was we'd had enough of freemium. So we wanted to be paid from day one and like no free plans. And then the other part was not only is there no free plans, we have to be billed annually up front because cash is much better. So we just literally went to the other end of the spectrum. We need to have money coming in straight away. And then the third one, which was less obvious, was it was important for us to integrate into the firm's clients because we wanted to do a lot more about how we can help firms make more money and help their clients save money. And with that native integration, we could look at scale all the software they're using and provide those opportunities. And so if all those 3 things weren't true, then we weren't going to go ahead with Rechargely. And so you obviously know how the story ended. All those things were true and we're here. And now it's just about scaling the business up.
It's still brave and bold though, because the idea that I'm launching a new idea, come with me on this journey, but I'd like you all to pay up front. How did you build that trust and commitment?
So during the build of Hudled, I started a finance community called Finance in Tech. It has about 1,600 members now, hundreds of people in Slack every day, and we hold meetups in various places around Australia and New Zealand. So over that 4-year period, I became a bit of like the trusted thought leader in the space and built a lot of trust within that community. So before going ahead and doing any of this, it was much easier for me to ask people I already knew. Of course, there's a combination of asking anybody who will listen, but the very first people, we had that trust relationship already where it's like, if you build this, yes, we will do it, and yes, we'll pay for it immediately. And so that's how we got started on it.
That's so great. I feel the notion of trust of early stage founders, it's the most important thing. And I feel like it's something that's often very underrated by a lot of people. I think when you think about your marketing approach or your sales approach, it's always going straight to the ads or something else before you do that. I'm interested to know, I guess, your thinking around building community and how that's been a source of revenue, a source of growth for your business as well, thinking outside those regular marketing channels.
So when we started getting our first customers into Slack, it was just so we had an easy way so we could speak to people. And something a bit weird happened. The people in the group saw that other people were in the group and then they started inviting people into it. And that wasn't the reason why we had the community, or like the Slack group at that point in time. And so we decided as an experiment where if we went onto LinkedIn, we'd look at all the companies that had raised Series A, write them a really personalized message saying, hey, I saw you've just joined company X. You're a standalone finance person. We've got this community of 50 people or 20 people, however many it was at the time. Would you like to be part of it? You can ask all your most burning questions and it won't cost you $10,000, because if you need to engage your own accountant, then that's like fees for them to go and claim. And I think like 70% of people said yes. And from that was really interesting, because we spoke about LinkedIn earlier. It's just this awful place at times of all these messages and things that come in. So to get that type of cut through, it was really interesting early on. And so how we think about community as a channel for us is, if we evangelize and create a lot of value in the space and make the people the face and the front of the community, so front load the effort, then we can reap a lot of the benefits over time. And community isn't a great revenue stream in the short term by any means, but what it does build up over time is people will come up to me at an event and make sure they say hello and thank you for organizing the event and doing all these things. And so you build up a lot of value that you can't actually quantify initially, but it's when you go back in 3 years' time and you have that ask of, hey, I saw you've been part of FIT for 3 years. It's on your LinkedIn profile. I'm doing this new thing. Have you got 15 minutes? People are very happy to make that investment back. And a lot of people, other founders, for instance, will ask me, how do you build community and how has this worked for you? And for most people, it's not real. For most, it's not really a good idea, because you don't have the niche or the gap to fill first. So if you don't have that gap, then you don't have the audience. And so because people naturally came into it, we built it by mistake. It wasn't something we intentionally did. And I think that's part of the magic behind it, solving problems that people needed to be solved. And then we sort of work backwards that into our business model.
I feel like that's a bit of a recurring theme here. You've got a lot of unexpected surprises that you've taken into your business and you've turned them into profit centers. How are you looking across your business for those signals, and how are you making sure you're staying nimble to be able to execute on those?
I think a lot of things don't work. And so over 5 years, you can point to, we did all these things that haven't worked. When we were starting out Hudled, there was things we wanted to explore around doing vendor negotiation that worked, but we didn't really like it. It just felt as if it was just glorified services. We were doing stuff around data, about aggregating insights that were able to be used, like for people to understand sort of trends. If you're a software vendor, you could see the performance of other competitors like you. That worked, but didn't really work because we didn't have the scale. And so there's all these just experiments and bets where it's always much easier looking backwards and saying, this has worked. But then there's also the many things that haven't worked. So ultimately you need to have enough time to work out what doesn't work. And then when you find something that does work, it's being very disciplined. And that's something we weren't early on. When I look back on our founder journey, being very disciplined of, okay, Rechargeably is working. Our value proposition and people we're speaking to are accountants that are on Xero. They're spending X $100,000 per year. We can solve this problem for that person. And just talking to that and focusing on that. We're not doing Intuit. We're not doing MYOB. We're just focusing on that one thing. And then we're making that work really well. And then we can sort of compound off that, the word of mouth, all the other things. And I think that's been probably the lesson that we've taken most out over the last 12 to 18 months, that focus. And by saying no to things, once you've worked out what does work, is really that superpower.
I want to go back to the community for just a second, because you called it value, but I would say it's also goodwill, which is one of those things that accountants have a terrible time valuing in a business, but is nonetheless priceless on occasion. How do you think about that? And it's that sense of pay it forward in the process.
And that's ultimately it. So you put something, you invest a lot of time up front for a long period of time, and then at some point you'll get something out the other end. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, then it doesn't have to be 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. But the inherent
Nor does
value,
it have a number on it.
Exactly. Well, it does when people ask to buy it. And that's happened a few times. And the funny thing is, when a software company offers it versus a small consulting business, the numbers either, we'll give you like $50,000 versus X million dollars. They're two very, very different numbers. So if you can sell services into the community, you can obviously make a lot of money out of it, but then you potentially poison the well if people feel like they're just going there to be sold to. And so there is a fine balance between those two things.
Before you were founder of Rechargely and Huddled, or even before I think CPA, you were
talking about the most important one?
The paddleboarding?
The first one? The paddleboarding.
Yeah. I want to hear about your first brush with entrepreneurship and also a couple of travel stories if you've got them.
Yeah, so
there's got to be a lemonade stand in here somewhere, I'm sure.
It is actually almost that. So like growing up, all my like friends, families, etc., they were all like teachers, lawyers, tradespeople. So that startup DNA wasn't really around. So I didn't have the lemonade stand, but my sister and I, we used to go door to door because like we used to go around the park, pull out all the lavender like out of like the ground, put it in the jars, shake it up, and then we would go and sell that. And we did that for about maybe 2 months on the weekend. And like everyone just felt sorry for us, obviously. Like we're just given these like ugly jars with all these dead heads of lavender. And then like that was that first sort of taste of entrepreneurship. And I was like, okay, I'm sort of destined to do these things a little bit differently. So in uni, a friend and I, we were like, let's go and drop ship paddleboards. I'm like, all right, how do we do that? Like, well, we don't know. Let's just go through the process. We got a logo. We call it Caimana Paddleboards, which means the power of the ocean. So like that sounds like a very deep, meaningful name, like really tapping into our Hawaiian roots.
Yep. With a touch of Om Shanti in there as well.
And so we bought, I think, 20 boards. And halfway through all those boards arriving, I went away to Europe for 3 or 4 months. And so all the boards were at my friend's house. And he was just like so annoyed because we'd agreed to do this thing and we're going on eBay selling them. You'd have people arriving, asking all these detailed questions about how the paddleboards work, what performance things. And this was just on like eBay and Gumtree.
It floats, you get on the bloody thing and you paddle.
It's made of fiberglass and just go for it. And then our parents were getting so annoyed because the whole garage would be filled with these boards and I'd gone away for a part of it. So we came back, we made the decision. And the irony at that time was like, oh, we feel like we're too early. Paddleboards feel like they're popping up everywhere. And I don't know if that was the truth or not, but we just weren't extremely passionate about bringing paddleboards in and selling them in that way. It's like, what does that journey look like? Were we going to then actually properly drop ship them and have them in like an Amazon type container? And we're like, you know what, this just isn't for us. This is a very good taste of what...
early lessons in warehousing and inventory.
Yeah, exactly. Free inventory through the family home. And so we went through all of that. And that sort of experience over what I think about a year. We didn't lose any money, which was great because you get the surprises. Like you bring in a board and some import tax comes in. Like we weren't planning for that. So our margin initially was about 50-60%. And then when it was all said and done on a $850 board, I think we made about $200, which we were very happy with, but we thought we were going to make a lot more. So then when we like worked it out, like how much time we spent doing almost, just individual sales, like, no, like this.
Was this the moment that thought, gee, I should do accountancy because it'd be really interesting to figure out how the margins work.
It inspired that I should be doing software because then you can solve all these problems in a much easier way. And then so the next thing I ended up doing was this dating app with that guy's brother of all people. We did that for like 3 months. That was a huge waste of money. It got banned from the App Store. It didn't really work the way that it was supposed to be. The concept was he'd had this friend of a friend in the US had built a similar thing. And it was about how to meet people, but meeting people based on a mutual rating that you'd been given. I think there's a Black Mirror episode about this where you rate individual people and then you can sort of meet and hang out with people in your rating system. So like, yeah, this sounds like a great idea. We'll do that.
Yep.
That didn't work.
Me and all my 4.7.
Yeah, exactly. Like it'll get all the attention that you would hope for. But then when it just got banned, or we could only do Android, I'm like, oh, we don't really want to do Android.
Never date anyone with an Android phone.
No.
5 stars there. Okay.
Not at all. And then so we're just working through these things as we go along. And then a few years after that, I started doing a childcare app called Little Hubs, and that worked much better. This was about how you find and connect people with shared care. was building that up until COVID, and I was lucky enough to sell the business. And this was by no means this life-changing outcome, but what it did teach me is, in comparison to the other things that kind of got off the ground but didn't really, we got to material revenue. We hit a lot of headwinds from COVID because anything around shared or childcare itself was just really going to be heavily impacted. Was able to do the sale, and then that gave me the opportunity and headspace to do Antler and sort of be where I am now.
And tell us about that Santi experience, because the two of you, was it met on LinkedIn? Was that it was, or Facebook?
It was a Facebook post.
Yeah.
So in that window of time,
it's like, see, that's his other dating option. Facebook.
Yeah, I was on, I'd met a few founders in Antler because the first program had just run. A friend of mine was in that program.
Back in 2019.
Yeah, and like, you should go and do it. You're not working at the moment. And everyone had gone into lockdown. So I was like, all right, great. I can sort of meet some other founders, find a new idea, or worst case, I can go find a job in a couple of months. And then after I met a few people, I went on to the Sydney Startups page, and I saw that someone was posting about this problem specifically for accountants, or at least that's how I interpret it. He was like, we're looking to solve this software management program for this, this, and this. I was like, oh, cool. I know lots of accountants. I've done all this stuff before. This would be great. And so that Facebook post turned into us meeting, turned into 4 weeks later, Santi decided I should be the CEO. We then pitched to Antler, and then 6 weeks later, we've got venture funding. I've got a full-time job again. And then like maybe 3 to 4 months after that, we'd raised something like $800,000, and then we were hiring out a team, and off we go. And so again, these are just the very counter. You don't expect these things to happen. You just have to put yourself in a position to, one, be rejected, and then I guess two, be prepared to take the risk if a good opportunity approaches.
It was a very wild and fast ride, that one. I do remember. It was in your first year. Your seed round was
It all happened within a few months. Yeah, it all happened in a few months.
It was like bang, and you're out of the stools.
And then what didn't end up working is, because the message we were told at that time was just get the product, get some customers, do it as quickly as possible, and then raise that next round. So we're like, great, hire a whole bunch of engineers too quickly, burn through way too much money. And then we had to really just stop and reset and think about, well, who are we, what game are we playing? Are we trying to play the raise money game, or are we actually trying to solve problems for our customers? And so then as we realized that the first version didn't really solve the problem in the best way it needed to for these customers, we had all these bizarre things happening in our companies where I'm doing one-on-ones with 8 or 9 different people. I'm not speaking to customers. I'm helping prevent internal team conflicts. Right? We're doing all the wrong things. And then by sort of resetting a lot of our team and going back to, well, how do we help accountants better manage their software? We realized with like a very small team, you can actually go quite far. And so after going through almost half the money within the first year, not being able to raise as quickly as we thought initially, it was a very humbling lesson in that next dollar isn't guaranteed. You're not entitled to that next round. You actually have to build something of value in order to do it.
And that's where the lesson, don't spend a dollar until you have to, came from, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think as well, it was many companies and founders, because we were all in the same program, we're all good friends, you look left and right and you're like, they're spending this, they've raised $1 million, I want to raise, and then you just got caught up in all the wrong things. And so this is where it became very easy as we made the decision about what to do, about how to start to grow Rechargely. It's solve a customer problem, just deal, and just don't worry about anything else. And then as you do that, then you have the right to go and do other things in the future.
So you're keeping up with the startup Joneses. It's always expensive.
Yeah, it definitely can be. Speaking of Santi, and you've also got another co-founder, Gabe, a question we'd love to ask on the show is, what is the secret to a good co-founder relationship? And you've got 2 co-founders, so got double the question.
So I think for us, we went through 2 phases. One being, so we started working in person, then we went remote, and then we went back in person around about the time like we decided like to work on Rechargely. I think that when you do anything early stage where you're starting from nothing, being around the people in person is much more fulfilling and enjoyable. And our relationship when it was just Santi and I was impacted a lot more when we were in different time zones, different places. You ride the lows, there's the miscommunications from Slack because what you read very literally is not always what it means. And I think with our relationship and then introducing a third co-founder, you solve problems much, or at least I've solved problems much easier in person because you just see that there's another person there. There's good intent behind any action. You know they're also trying their best. They may be tired. There's other things going on. And if you enjoy hanging out with them outside of the sort of whatever work hours that you do, then everything sort of really doesn't matter. And what we realized what didn't work, we went through, or at least I think it didn't work. Maybe Santi disagrees. We used to, because we weren't a lot in person, we used to do these quarterly or 6-month like feedback sessions around what we could improve and do with one another. And they just weren't that helpful. It was like we've built up this checkbox over 3 months or 6 months. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, well, this is great. It would have been much better knowing this 5 months ago, or it happened so long ago, it just became stale or it wasn't relevant. And then it's like, well, we're meeting now in person every day. We see things that happen and we sort of work on the go. The need to do that just completely went away. So introducing our third co-founder. So I'm just going to have a little bit of water.
Not a problem. Make a note on that one, Matt. We missed one last week. Yeah, but it was all right though. It still went through okay.
When we brought in our third co-founder, because he'd mostly experienced working with us as a co-founder in person, we didn't really need to do all those things. If you want to catch up about a separate issue, that's fine. But we've not really lent into doing any of these like monthly one-on-ones, personal, because we sort of live it all anyway. And when we have tried it, it doesn't really uncover anything new. If you want to talk about something, then do it. Otherwise, like, let's just focus on why we're here. And that's worked for us.
But at the same time, as you flagged earlier, you were dealing with the shit fights with the team, putting aside the co-founder relationships. What did you learn out of that experience?
Revenue solves a lot of problems. Honestly, yeah, that's it.
That's a really honest answer. I love it.
Yeah,
it's very true.
Very simple and straightforward. So tell me, because we also like to talk about life outside of the startup, tell us about Alex World.
All right, so life at the moment, I feel like most other guys in their early 30s, I've gone down I want to do marathons and run. All my friends do that now, and I've tragically been involved. I've tragically fallen in that as well. And that's mostly it, to be honest. Like, we work quite a lot at the moment, given that we try to scale up and do a lot of things. There's not a whole heap of time outside of spending time with my wife, doing like the usual things with friends and stuff, but it's mostly just running, which is very boring. And we've made a rule at home that I don't ever talk about running because I became one of those people that I hate. Just like the no hobbies.
Let me show you my Strava. You're going to be fascinated.
Exactly. I was like, oh God, I don't want to be that person. But when you're in the bubble with all your mates and it's great. Mm. But outside of that bubble, you're like, oh God, like, I hope I don't sound like that.
So, but give us a picture of the bubble. Is it, because one of the conversations we've noted before is guys just focus on the task at hand, whereas women are having a mad chat. They'll be running and blah, blah, blah at the same time, whereas the blokes are just like, let's do this.
So
what are you guys like?
There's a bit of both.
Yeah.
So we do track on a Friday, and that's very much like you just head down in your zone, working through that. And then you'll do an easier run on a Sunday, which might be about 2 hours, and then that's just casual and chatting. So there might be 12 or 14 people on the Sunday or the Friday, and then everyone gets coffee afterwards, and that's basically where you get all the social out in one time, because it is quite hard to find and see friends during the week. So if you just aggregate them all into one place, you convince them that they should start running, then that's sort of like the cheat code of being able to spend more time with your mates.
And is it just a broad group? Because I know Batco at StartMate got totally into this and has a running group, but it's a whole bunch of startup founders. So I imagine there's a lot of shop going down in that one.
Yeah, it's a bit of a random group. So we started recruiting people into it, and it actually was quite funny where one of my friends that we run with, he would bump into people randomly and then they would add him into Strava, and then they would message on Strava, and then this guy or person would then join. So there's these mini recruitment drives that happen where these new guys come in, and then all of a sudden 6 months later we're all mates, and it's just weird how that little grid of who you've run past, you can work out who's who. And so yeah, like that's like the highlight of things that are happening at the moment.
So what's the ambition? Is there a New York or Boston or a run marathon that you want to do?
I did Sydney this year, Ballarat and Gold Coast, and that was too much because it is just so much training and injuries and things like that. So I think next year, ideally, I'll try and do one of the international ones, but they're also hard to get into now. They're so competitive, and you have hundreds of thousands of people, or maybe not hundreds, but 100,000 plus people doing
it's a massive thing now.
City to Surf, for instance, they have 100,000 plus people. You try and do Sydney, there's 40, 50,000 people that are doing it, and they only have a very small portion. So even if you want to do a lot of these events, you've got to either raise a ton of money or you've got to be doing, just get lucky, I guess.
And in terms of the fitness that you just mentioned then, I assume it brings some great benefits to you as a founder and work and business. But as you just said, doing 3 in the last year, what's it taught you about that balance between the effort around that and keeping enough in reserve to be able to do your day job?
Yeah, I think running and startups have that very similar line between them, because you do think that startups aren't a marathon and yada, yada, yada. There's that whole line around it. But you do have to work pretty hard for long periods of time and not burn out. And I think those are the main lessons that you take out of it. And I think it's also just being the sucker for punishment as well, where you're just happy just to go into the zone, and when you're training, whatever it may be, you just sort of forget that, or you think about work problems, or you are able to like have the free mind to go on that journey. And so, yeah, I think that's generally what's worked pretty well for me. And by doing that in conjunction with the startup, it's probably just made me much better, just for all the same reasons of it keeps you out of pubs. It makes a lot of other decisions much easier, because you've got to be in bed early and up at 4 a.m. So it's a bit of a forcing function for a lot of other things, which I find very helpful.
And you also have in the back of your mind, there's a whole bunch of people behind me trying to chase me down.
Always. It's very competitive. It's always very, very competitive. And that's probably the part which is similar-ish to startups, where you see your friend raising money or hitting this revenue number. You're like, I should be doing that. And it's those things that help push you along.
One of my favorite questions to ask founders, but what's a day in the life of Alex look like?
It's not very interesting.
Not?
No.
Did I hear a 4 a.m. wake up? That's an early rise.
It is. So maybe between 4:15 to 4:45, somewhere within that. It's either wake up, train. If I have to do any calls with people in America, that will be between 6 and 8 a.m. I'll then hop on the train from Cronulla into the office, then work a couple hours on the train in the morning, lunch, work in the afternoon, and then either train or something in the evening, or just swim at the beach because it's summer. My life at the moment is like very regimented and very boring. And this is the problem of it's very unglamorous. It's just the repetition of doing the same thing, having calls with customers, going to visit customers, traveling to see customers. These are the things that take up a lot of the time. So you need to really enjoy the people you're going to visit. So I went to Tasmania last week. I'm about to see a few firms. I'm going to Brisbane next Thursday and Friday. And it's just putting myself in the position of what I've found that always works is when you meet people face to face. And it sort of goes back to this trust element. When you meet people face to face, they're more engaged with you, they're more likely to buy with you, and they also want to be a part of that journey as well, because outside of what's very clear here, not a very exciting story, is people are, especially business owners, gravitate towards spending time with other business owners. And so I can lean into that really well. And I always joke that my best persona is like a female recent partner in a firm, because they've worked extremely hard where to get there. I can tell them a little bit about the story of all the things that haven't worked and having to fight and go through it. And then that obviously resonates with them in ways that they've probably gone through their career. And by building that relationship, that then means they're much more engaged to do those little things to help work and build that working relationship with you. And so that's what I found to be most successful. And that's why I've been doing a lot more travel this year than previous. It's travel, see them, and then reap the benefits over time.
So in that context, do you see yourself as a discipline and routine guy? Because startups, whilst it sounds very boring, are notoriously chaotic, unless you've got a secret formula that's just making it all work exactly how it's supposed to work.
We've agreed within our team what the roles are in the company right now. And my job is to get the customers and keep them happy. And that comes with a lot of repetition. So most of the problems that we face are normally the same, because it's not one problem normally impacts 50 people. So if I break out what my day would look like, I would be doing 3 to 4 like introductions to our product works each day. We have a separate salesperson that books all the demos and does all the prep for that. I will just do the introduction and explain who I am and what we do. That's about a third of every day. The other third goes into support and building out a lot of our AI functionality about how we can do support and onboarding without me being there. So something that I've invested a ton of time in the last quarter is we've built this AI onboarding agent. Sorry, we haven't bought it. We're using a tool for it, but we've trained and enabled it. And it's crazy.
You've sculpted it.
So this feature that I absolutely love, I haven't shared it with anybody yet, is in our product, you can click in and it says start your onboarding and it pops up a Zoom. You've got this like good looking early 20s avatar guy pop up on the screen, and then you start.
So a lot like you, really.
Looks nothing like me. I wish, honestly. And when this guy pops up, he will then start the conversation with you, share the screen, and he'll do all the things I was doing previously, but then it's all done through this agent. I then get a Slack report of what's happened. And then on the other side of that, when they ask follow-up questions, I can then forward that email to our support.
Wow.
And then the AI will do the first response, because like I was saying before, there's a lot of repetition. So if there's a lot of repetition, you can build process around it. And so I'm trying to build this like orchestration around me of I can have support, onboarding, and then when people really want to speak to me, then they can eventually get in touch. And the irony of this is even when people can get to the answer or they've been given the answer, they'll just say, no, speak to human. And they'll be like, hey, look, the first answer was actually correct. Here's the answer. I am here if you need me, but please like trust that we are reviewing these things. And that's been quite fun working through that.
It's also been a revelation in that respect. And I completely understand that, because at the same time we're having the conversations around AI, there's a lot of messaging that we can't trust it. We need to double check its work all the time. So that's probably why people are curious about the experience, but at the same time going, I just need a human to confirm it.
I agree. And we have a lot of firms now in the UK, and with the time difference, it's extremely hard to be responsive between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. their time. And part of our education process now is if you have a question, use support at. We will review it. You will get a response. Check it, because it may not be correct, but we can probably solve 80% of your problems without you having to come to me. And something that I really am starting to believe in is that people want the answers. They don't really care where it comes from. And if we can create the right experience where they can trust the responses that they get, and then we're very disciplined, which this part I'm not disciplined about, of reviewing the support questions, adding the article, those very tedious but important steps where if that question comes up, it's always answered. And then you're building this repository of knowledge where you don't actually need people to do it. Of course, bugs always need to be fixed because there's no answer to a problem in a product, but every FAQ question should be solvable. And if you create that repository over time, then you can reap the benefits and do things that much bigger organizations only aspire to do.
Mm.
So what's been adding to your growth that you haven't been getting anywhere else?
Okay, so there's two things that I really like. One is more out of curiosity and the other is a bit different. So the first part is I've invested in and I subscribe to a few sort of like angel syndicates. So I've invested in a few funds, but the beauty of that is that you get all the deal flow about how other companies are doing. And if you want motivation, it's looking at how good other companies are doing. And so even if I know or don't know the other founders, you can see what industries they're in, how much money they're making, what are the major revelations that have been shared in the investor memos and things like that. And just by having the pulse into that, it's like very interesting, of course, but it's also very motivating because you see, oh, wow, I didn't realize there's so much money in X. So that's been very helpful at a personal level. On the other side, I would say the Antler cohort of founders that I've met among with like other founder groups and stuff, that's been really helpful where you have people starting on the same part of your journey. You're seeing them scale, you see what problems they have. And I think you're just aligned to speaking more to people that are at the same stage as you. So I gravitate much more now to people that have a product in market, that are scaling, that have similar challenges. It's not as enjoyable if I don't know the person initially to work through I'm thinking about starting a business conversation. Like you sort of like evolve over time with that. And I think naturally your network and the people who you spend time with evolve with that too. Now, that's not to say that if a friend or someone has that conversation, you still do it because people have invested in you in the past. But I get the most value out of speaking to people that are that one stage ahead and you just see what they've been doing that works, asking, this is my problem about growth, about this, how have you done it? And founders are pretty generous with information in comparison to a lot of other people that you ask. Because if you want raw numbers around how things are working, what hasn't been working, it's almost a therapy session at times. Like even this feels like a therapy session in a different way where you just explain all the things that have not worked so then you can find the one thing that does work.
Clarity.
Well, it sounds like the Founder Journey dating app is the next thing to build on your list, Alex.
We can go back.
Back to the future. Thanks for joining us on Startup 360. All the best with Rechargely and, of course, with Hudled and the Founder dating app.
And the founder community.
And the running.
And the running.
I should say, is there one dream you have for the running? What is the goal? Under 2 hours for a marathon?
It was under 3 hours. That was the goal.
Right.
I did 3:01 this year, which was a bit depressing. So I had to roll that over to next year's goal.
All right. Well, we hope you crack it.
Thank you
Thanks
very
for joining
much.
us.
Cheers.
Well, what are your plans for this weekend?
I won't be running a marathon, but maybe I should start.
You run Fish
everyone around
Burners.
me
That
running.
is its own marathon.
That's certainly right. My weekend this weekend is, I haven't even thought that far ahead. Oh, my dad's back actually from overseas. So
Oh, yay. Welcome
I'm gonna
home,
be seeing
Dad.
him, which would be nice. So
That's fine.
What about you?
Our daughter's packing up her first year at uni. So she's coming home from Melbourne.
Yay.
So we're a little bit excited about
It's a
that.
homecoming
I
weekend.
surprised her mum on the weekend. It was her birthday. And in secret, I shipped Lulu home. And she just walked in the front door and went, hi. And Mama kind of screamed and then burst into tears. And they had big hugs. And it was a lovely moment
That's
and
great.
a nice surprise. But yes, this weekend is pack up your year at college. And I can't believe it's gone already. You realise there are only 2 episodes of Startup 360
Oh my
left for
God,
the year.
That makes you feel.
And I've got a couple of cracking guests lined up from the Parliamentary Friends of Tech event that I went to at New South Wales Parliament this week. So I asked a couple of great people to come along and we'll have some really cool conversations the next 2 weeks.
Well, everyone have to stay tuned to find out.
Yep. But that is it for the week. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget you can watch Startup 360 on YouTube or listen to it on Spotify or Apple. This is a private media production. Thank you so much to the fabulous Matt Jackson for making it all happen. Also to Ella and to James and the team at Private Media. You have a great weekend. We'll see you next Friday. Bye for now.